Welcome aboard TED Talks Cruises, the podcast where wanderlust meets wisdom. Join our two hosts on a cruising adventure full of laughter, learning, and luxury. Ken Conan is a cruise rookie. He's wide-eyed, full of questions, and maybe still figuring out which end is aft. Ted Blank is a seasoned cruise expert who's been there, done that, and he even has a preferred deck chair. Each week, Ted and Ken dive into the world of cruising, from picking the right itinerary to insider tips, their personal insights, and behind-the-scenes secrets. Whether you're planning your first cruise or you're a platinum tier cruiser looking for fresh perspectives, TED Talks Cruises brings relatable stories, helpful advice, and plenty of good vibes. So get ready to laugh, learn, and set sail. No passport required.
Oh, hey, it's Ken Conan with TED Talks Cruises. I've got my travel expert with me, Mr. Ted Blank. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me this morning. Both of us have our coffees. We're getting her going a little
We're doing
early.
it early, but usually we do it about lunchtime. So
I know.
Maybe that's why we always talk about food, because we leave and we're like, boy, now I'm really hungry.
Right. I need to go grab a steak or something.
Yeah.
Yes. Great fries. Yeah, something awesome. Well, today we're going to talk about staterooms on different ships and kind of how to pick them. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to talk about choosing the best stateroom for you.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm excited about this. I've had a couple cruises where I princess on a larger ship. I've done a couple river cruises. So I've got just a little bit of opinion, but I'm really excited to hear about all of the staterooms that you've experienced or seen or toured. So where do you want to start?
Well, I always like to, folks will sometimes come up to me and say, oh my gosh, Ted, I love your life. You get to travel all the time. And, we do have the opportunity in this profession to travel a fair amount. Now, I always tell people it's not a vacation, right? It's inspections and tours and conferences and things like that. But whenever travel agents travel on cruise ships, we usually get the last stateroom left. So,
Is that right?
So I am very experienced with the least desirable stateroom on any given cruise ship. So I do feel like I have an expertise in that. But no, I have traveled. I've traveled in everything from smaller window staterooms, outside staterooms, up to very nice suites. So I have a good selection. But yeah, I think it's a good topic, and it's a very common question we receive from our clients. Hey, what's the best stateroom on this cruise?
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited. And how do you want to frame this? Do we want to go from kind of, an inside stateroom all the way up to the mega owner suite, or how do you want to work this?
I think actually the first question that I always ask when somebody asks me that question isn't necessarily what stateroom number we should look for, what type of stateroom we should look for, but what ship should we be looking for?
Okay.
And I think that's really about 95% of the answer to that question. And a lot of times when people are maybe obsessing over a stateroom selection or something like that, I think maybe they've picked the wrong ship.
Really?
And so sometimes it's good to take a step back.
Yeah.
And if you think about the world of cruises, you have everything from the big mega ships that carry 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people down to small river cruise ships that carry 100.
Yeah.
And kind of everything in between. And not just from a hardware perspective, not just the size of the ship, but the type of experience that comes along with it.
Yeah.
And so, on a smaller ship, say a Regent Seven Seas cruise, you're going to be in a mini suite or a full suite. There is no inside cabin. There is no, cabin with just a window. They're all balconies. They're all suites. They're all mini suites. And so maybe, we're thinking we're going to want to go on a larger ship or even a mega ship. But in fact, there would be a different cruise that might be a much better choice and actually get you that stateroom that you want as part of the deal.
Interesting.
And one of the places where that comes up with people is when they'll look at a price tag.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's very interesting because when you're choosing a stateroom or you're choosing a cruise, price tag is part of the conversation, right? Most of us don't say, spend whatever. We have some idea of what we want to spend. We have some idea of maybe what our friends spend, or we've maybe looked on the internet and we think it should cost about X. And especially when you talk about suites, mini suites on any cruise ship, or when you look at those small ship luxury cruises, like say a Regent Seven Seas cruise, understanding what comes with that price is really critically important. Because you might have somebody who's going humming along, thinking about going on a trip to Alaska, looking at a big ship cruise, and they're like, well, I like a little space. I like to spread out. I'd like a bigger stateroom, or I want a stateroom in a really prime location. But when you start to do that value comparison and start to do the math on that, it's maybe the MBA in me, you start to look at things kind of from that, financial perspective. Oftentimes, those small luxury, more inclusive cruises end up being a much better overall value.
Huh, interesting.
When you figure the cost of excursions and things like that. And so that plays into stateroom selection.
Yeah.
Because you're starting here already. You're starting with a mini suite.
Right.
And the question is, is that fine? Then we start to talk about those traditional questions. Where on the ship? Which side of the ship? Or are we looking at a suite? And so it's a question about, first of all, I think what ship is the right fit. And getting that right, like I said, is probably about 90-95% of the battle.
Yeah. But I'm guessing you and your team are asking just a ton of questions to help figure out like what is right? Is it excursions? Is it large ship? Is it the entertainment? Is it the room? Like all these questions.
What's the personality fit? And then taking a look at the value and making sure that, we're not just looking at price, that we're looking at value.
Yeah.
And then we certainly spend a lot of time on that actual stateroom selection piece. But I like to put that out there first that, before we even get to that point, let's make sure we're on the right cruise ship. And I'm sure, I spend some time on cruise ship forums and online forums, and it's just, it actually saddens me to see people who, they clicked and they booked a cruise on their own, or they called a cruise line and they booked, and now they're totally helpless. And they are relying on the wisdom of the internet to help them choose their stateroom and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, if you read the comments section, there's so much incorrect information, so many people with strong personal preferences that think they apply to everyone.
Sure.
That that's a minefield out there that you don't have to navigate, but a lot of people do.
I ran into a friend on a walk yesterday, and she mentioned that she was looking for vacations down the road, and she felt like there was a shift where people, and I love your take on this, where people years ago were like, ooh, the internet, and we got all this info, and we're going to make all the decisions and do all the stuff and blah, blah, blah. And she feels like, and I thought this was a good take, but want to hear your take. She feels like the shift is coming back to the Ted Blank, luxury travel and adventures, where we want that, we want that concierge service. We want that
the service, the expertise.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we want to know that we're in good hands, and there's not going to be 1 or 2 or 10 surprises, right? Because I don't know.
Nobody
I like
likes
a couple surprises, but usually it's around my birthday or Christmas.
Exactly.
It's not on my trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah,
that
no, I think that's true. And I think that helping to make the selection of the stateroom and things like which side of the ship do I want to be on?
Right.
And is it important? That's something that we can help folks make that decision.
Tell me about a time where side of the ship is important.
Almost never.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say.
Yeah.
And that is a really great question related to stateroom location.
Yeah.
Because, we sell 100, 200 Alaska cruises every single year, and guaranteed that one side of the ship will be completely full and one side is completely empty. And you have a whole bunch of people standing there saying, ooh, I got the best side of the ship.
Yeah.
And what I will tell you, having been in Alaska, more than a dozen times, is that the side of the ship makes absolutely no difference when you're in Alaska. Because anytime you are close enough to land for you to see land, there will be sites on both sides.
It's right there on both sides.
It's right there on both sides. And many times you go in, you turn around, and you come out. So both sides get that view. So, I would say the one place where probably it does make a difference is if you're crossing the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh.
And you're going from east to west or west to east. You're going this way instead of that way on the world. And the sun will be on one side and not on the other side. So if you're on the south side of the ship, you'll have much more sun than you will on the north side.
Got it. Okay.
And so that's a difference.
Okay.
But other than that, I would say generally there's really no better, no worse. And again, anytime, we were sailing out of Lisbon, Portugal. Yeah. Well, on one side you have the lights of the city, on the other side you have the statue of Christ the Redeemer.
Wow.
I mean, pick which one is better. I don't know. So I would say of all the things to worry about on a ship stateroom selection, that's the least
Low on the list.
of the worries, low on the list.
Okay.
Some of the things that I think are important, first of all, are the category of stateroom you choose.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
And the cruise lines are run by MBAs who are very sharp. And so what they have realized is they have a lot of data to analyze.
Yeah.
And so they look at how the ships fill up. And they look at when people express their preferences, where they go first. And they have taken a ship, and 20, 25 years ago, a ship might have had 10 categories of stateroom.
Okay.
And there would have been inside, outside, 2 or 3 in each, balcony, 2 or 3, a couple suites. Now, just the standard balcony stateroom, that's probably 85% of a cruise ship's real estate, might have 20 different categories.
20.
2-0. Yep.
Wow.
On some of the big ships in particular, even small ships, they might
That's
have
nuts.
5 or 10 categories.
Wow.
And that's essentially the cruise line trying to price discriminate a little bit.
Huh.
And the pickier you are, the more money they think you're going to pay. And so they have that figured out. So guaranteed they have that figured out. But
Yeah.
really kind of the logic to that is that the closer to the center of the ship you are and the higher up you are, those are generally the most desirable staterooms.
Interesting.
And that's for 2 reasons.
Yeah. Tell me about
First
that.
of all, the higher you are, the further you can see.
Yep.
Right? So if you're on deck 16 versus deck 4, you've got a way longer visibility.
Sure.
If you don't believe me, go up an elevator in a skyscraper and
Yep.
look out. You really see, go to the top of a mountain. You see a lot more than you see from the bottom.
Yep.
And the center is because when ships move, the center is the most stable part of the ship. And enough folks are convinced that that will help, with seasickness or things
Sure.
like that. Now,
Sure.
again, I would say that that's not generally a concern for most people, but those are going to be the most expensive staterooms. And then as you go to the extremes of the ship, the price tends to go down
Okay.
a little bit. And as you come down towards the bottom, it comes down a little bit. Now, something I would say that's, a little counterintuitive is in Alaska, great to be up at the top. You can have nice views of the glacier. But if you're a little lower, you can actually see the water.
Right.
And you can see what's in the water.
Right.
So whales and sea otters and things like that definitely makes a difference. Now, on a river cruise ship, you have 2 decks. The difference between the 2 decks is really nothing
Yeah.
in terms of location, but the ones on the higher deck are going to be more expensive than the ones
Interesting.
on the lower deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the second piece to that is what sort of unpleasant distractions might be nearby. So one thing that I genuinely will look for very carefully for folks is I don't want to be near a laundry. A lot of ships have self-service laundry facilities.
Sure.
They're busy and laundries make noise.
Yep.
So you maybe don't want to be right by the laundry.
Yeah.
Being near an elevator on a big ship, you might want to be really near the elevator because it's a long ways to that next elevator.
Oh, yeah.
But they might be noisy.
Yep.
So that's a consideration. Versus a small ship, it doesn't really make any difference. The distance between the elevators is really, really minuscule.
Yeah.
And so, that's another area that plays into it. And then are you, underneath the sports deck or on top of the disco or something like that, where there can be a little bit of noise. So those are kind of the really, I think, the important practical considerations. But most cruise ship staterooms fit, generally don't have those distractions.
Yeah.
So, one of the things we do is we look at the deck plan. And the deck plan is a floor plan of the ship. And you can tell pretty quickly what's above, what's below. And that's part of making that selection as well.
That's awesome. Remember when we were, the one big ship that I've been on was Princess for Alaska. And we were a deck or 2 up from the lifeboats.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, and I love your take on this, but if we were a deck lower, we might not be able to see the water that well because of the lifeboats.
And they will have balconies that are,
all.
cabins that have balconies that the lifeboat blocks your view.
That's what I was just thinking. Like,
if you're looking for a cheap balcony, that's a good way to do it. If all you really want to do is just be able to go outside and have that fresh air and that space.
Interesting.
But you raise an interesting point, and that is kind of how you use the stateroom. Yeah. And so, maybe you could talk a little bit about being in Alaska and what did you do with your stateroom? What did you, besides just sleep there, what else did you do when you were there?
It's a great question. So for us, we were, I think, 3 decks up. from like I guess what would you call that?
Promenade
The
deck.
promenade.
So you're probably on deck 10,
Yeah,
maybe or so,
Yeah,
out of
I think-
probably 15 or 16.
I think that sounds about right.
Yeah.
We're forward of midship, and for us, our balcony, we had, gosh, I don't know, it was probably 7 feet wide, and then the depth out was probably another maybe 3 feet.
3-4 feet, yeah.
Where we had some comfortable chairs out there, where we had like I could turn the chair face directly out, and I had plenty of room. I'm 6-ish, 6+ feet, and so my legs were fine, right? One of the things that we found, and we just kind of stumbled upon it, somebody was up on one of the top decks, and we're in Alaska, right? So it can get cold. And she had this comfy little blanket, and we're like, where'd you get that? And she goes, oh, they're just over here. And so there's a basket of them. And so we brought 2 blankets down to our suite. And on one of the chilly days, we're out there with our blankets out, and it's sunny out. Yeah. And so for us, what we found ourselves doing, our kind of ritual, if you will, that we got into was we would wake up, we would order coffee to our room, and we'd get some fancy stuff because it's fun. And then we'd go sit out on our deck and just enjoy the morning and the air. Oh,
So crisp and so clean.
You just wanted to bottle it up, bring it home, you know? Yeah. And so we would just watch everything kind of come to life as we were cruising into wherever we were cruising into. One morning we woke up, was it Sitka? I think, maybe not. One of the ports we were in, and we woke up there, and there was this little town, and we just were
it's by Skagway.
Skagway,
yes.
Yes.
You're like, oh, there's a town.
And so we woke up in Skagway, and it was just this little cute town. We had our little coffees. And so that was our kind of morning piece. And then during the day, we would go out and explore and do our thing. And then at night, we would come back, and if we were under sail, we would go back out again and just kind of take it in. And that was some of the best.
Scenery, of course, you're very, very close. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah, you can almost count the leaves on the trees in Alaska.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I felt like we were in like a fjord in like Norway.
You are. You really are.
You know?
You're just an American fjord.
It's just amazing. And for me, I'm a big outdoorsy. Like I call it big country. I love big country. I love Wyoming and Colorado. And I felt like Alaska was just like, boom.
Big country on steroids.
Country. Yes. Yes. The waterfalls you'd see. Yeah. And then you mentioned it earlier, but I don't know how many sea otters I saw swimming just right by our boat. And they'd be with their little rock doing their thing. We saw some having Beanox on that deck was another like fun learn that Shan, she works with you and your team. She's like, we got to get Beanox, and we both need a set, right?
Yeah, you do.
Not just one of us. Right. So one of us is like, hey, look at that. And you're like, I can't see anything. So we both had Beanox, and I'll tell you what, I would get out there and I would be just looking and here, there's
absolutely
a whale, just blowing the water, just, who knows how high, 30 meters in the sky. And you're like, whales. And then all of a sudden,
and then you see more, more. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So being outside, I mean, being outside is really, I think, an important reason why folks like those balcony staterooms. Yeah. And they kind of make cruise ships now, and that's about all they have. They don't even make inside staterooms. They don't even make they don't make too many inside staterooms. They have a few, but they don't make outside staterooms anymore. They're all balconies. Yeah. But you made a really good point, which is that it was part of the experience was the stateroom and how we use that. And so I think that's part of the conversation around using a stateroom. On a river cruise ship, for example, a lot of people after dinner, they like to go and maybe lie down and watch a movie.
Yeah.
And so, that's a great option.
Can I tell you real quick? Shan and I we were on Avalon cruising in Europe on the Danube. Avalon has their beds face right out to the window. Yep. And their suites go all the way out to the edge of the ship. And then they've got a trifold glass door you can swing open. And you're like, it's so fun just being like cozy in bed, but you're watching the world go by. There was something about it, and you're in Europe. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, well, and that I think when you talk about river cruises, the staterooms on river cruise ships are very different than they are on the ocean cruise ships. They tend to be smaller, just in general. And, Avalon Waterways, as you said, they have a kind of a Four Seasons porch that they have that the door is open to, and you can kind of look out. They have really big bathrooms. They do. As well, which you don't necessarily think is a big deal, but it can be a big deal. it just to have that space to spread out.
Yeah, I'm a bigger guy, and when I showered in one, and I don't remember which ship it was, but I remember like trying to turn, and my shoulders they weren't hitting, but it was close to hitting the door, and I was just like, I just felt like I didn't have any room. I felt like I was in like an RV.
Yeah, exactly. Some of them are like that.
Yeah,
and some of the river cruise ships have really tiny little staterooms. AMA Waterways does something a little different than Avalon, in that they have 2 balconies. So they have that French door sliding balcony, and then they have the outside balcony that you can go out on. Yeah. And so they've got kind of the choice depending on the weather and where you are. But another thing, speaking of bathrooms, I have to tell you that I think the most amazing amenity a bathroom can have is 2 sinks.
2 sinks.
2 sinks.
Okay.
Because then you've got, his and hers sinks.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about who's doing what and whose toothbrush is there or anything like that. And so, again, as we talk about choosing the ship and choosing the cruise line and looking at the value, the entry-level staterooms on most of the Regent Seven Seas fleet have 2 bathrooms or 2 sinks in the bathroom and a shower and a tub.
A tub as well.
Tub and a shower, yep.
Wow.
And so, that's part of that stateroom selection as well. And a lot of people really like tubs. And tubs are not common on a lot of cruise ships, right? Because they take up space. Yeah. They take up a lot of space. And so some people don't care. But that's part of that conversation again. And, you see how everything from the ship selection to the cabin category selection, and we haven't even talked about dining, all ties together. Yeah. And I think those are far more important than like literally the physical location on the ship, if you can avoid the laundry, the elevators, and being underneath the disco. Yeah. Now, if you have a little bit of a walking problem, being near the elevators isn't a bad thing.
Right.
I would say necessarily. But that's on river cruise ships, everybody has the same dining experience. Whether you're in the biggest suite or the smallest cabin, everything is very much the same because they're very, very small ships. Yeah. But on a lot of the bigger ships now, there are a lot of experiences that are tied into the stateroom. And it could be private deck space. It could be different dining options. It could be, certain suites have a butler, certain suites don't have a butler. Wow. You have access to a spa without cost or it's not included, so there are a lot of things that go into it. And I think if you were to actually try to make a matrix of every cruise ship, every cabin, every amenity, I mean, it'd be like a 6-dimensional cube, floating out there in cyberspace. So there are so many options out there to pick and choose from. And I think if there's one lesson I would really counsel people, to think about is don't just make the selection on price. Mm-hmm. Because, if you're looking on the internet, you're going to see price. And price is going to start to drive your conversation. And if you're having that conversation, you're not having the right conversation about choosing that choosing that correct stateroom.
Yeah. Well, and you brought it up earlier. There's so many extra little nuances to things. Like Regent has included excursions, right? Where you could be like, oh, I got this great price on XYZ ship, but none of your excursions are included. Yeah. Or there's not a drink.
You may spend more. You may spend more on the when you're traveling than you do before you get there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. All inclusive versus not all inclusive. I mean, a la carte pricing. And there are pros and cons to everything.
Right.
And so, but it is important to have that conversation. And it's just interesting because once in a while, we'll have somebody who says, "Well, I booked this cruise, and now I have a lot of questions," and I'll kind of always want to back the conversation up to, well, what did you book and why did you book it? Yeah. And 9 times out of 10 is I got a good deal, or I think I got a good deal. Mm-hmm. And then you start to unpack what they purchased, and it's like, oh,
right.
Friends don't let friends do that.
Right.
And so, that's why that question of, hey, which cabin is right for me? It's a really loaded question.
Yeah.
So many things that go into it.
Well, and it's one of those, that's why you engage Ted Blank Travel. I mean, you guys are the experts. You've done this year over year, the amount of cruises that you and your team have gone on. And it's literally like, you guys are like, I hope you don't hate this analogy, but you're like the ChatGPT of travel.
We kind of are.
You guys, you type in.
Except our information's current.
That's right.
I actually have to caution people, do not rely on any travel information from ChatGPT. Agree. Because it's using an internet from several years ago. So be very, very careful of that.
That's right. Yeah. Use Ted Blank Travel as your go-to. I always think of Chat as like a a consultant, and I think of you guys as consultants as well, high-end advisors, that there's no extra surprise fees. You guys may get better deals than you might find online where you're all confused, right?
Yeah.
Which I just love.
So can I tell you my secret favorite cabin location?
Heck yeah. All right, everybody get your pen and paper out. We're going to get
it depends.
Secret location.
Depends a little bit on the cruise ship, what specific stateroom it's going to be. But most cruise ships now are not very attractive from the outside. They kind of look like floating apartment buildings.
Yeah.
And so
True.
back in the glory days
True.
of cruising, ships were very elegantly designed. And they'd have a sharp bow at the front, and then they'd have kind of a tapered round stern.
Yep.
Well, now it's just like a big block.
Yep.
The good news, it looks ugly. The good news is, though, that there are always staterooms on the back of the ship or over the stern of the ship. And I have found that those are my favorite staterooms.
I would
now
not have
some
guessed
cruise
that.
ships have just kind of regular balcony staterooms back there.
Yeah.
But more and more they're becoming suite locations. So for example, on the Cunard, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Anne, Queen Victoria, they have some of their Queen's Grill and Princess Grill suites back there.
Really?
And the advantage to the stern is that, first of all, you have a view, 180 degree view,
Amazing.
but in both directions.
Yeah.
And, the ship comes and goes. And so as the ship goes, you can just kind of sit there and watch the world go by. And we were on a cruise coming back from Alaska,
Okay.
sailing through the little stretch of water between Vancouver Island and the mainland of British Columbia.
Yeah.
And it was starting to get to be dusk. And just sat there, kind of watched the sunset. You had this view of both sides of this narrow passageway. As the sun set, the stars came out. Just beautiful. Have a glass of wine, just enjoy it.
Love it.
Just a neat place. So that's my personal favorite location on a ship.
Yeah.
All other things being equal, some of the suites on the sterns of the ships are very, very nice.
That sounds great.
As well. So a lot of reasons for that. But my personal favorite location is on the stern.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I love that. What's the best way to reach you, your team, and get in touch and hear about some great travel ideas?
Yeah, you can click on the link in the comments below, tedblanktravel.com. You can give us a call, 651-964-8245. Or you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter, TED Talks Cruises, and we have a link down in the comments below.
That's awesome. And then like and subscribe below, as always.
Yeah, you don't want to miss another episode.
Yeah, you can't
miss
miss
another action-packed, fun-filled episode.
Ted and Ken on the old podcast.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in today. Again, this is TED Talks Cruises. I'm Ken Conan. This is Mr. Ted Blank. We will see you next time for another exciting episode. Thank you again for tuning in.